All right, good morning, everybody. We'll get started here. We're going to still, I'm sure, along the way, pull in a few more other folks who are on the wrong site. But in the meantime, for the sake of everybody that is here, we will get going. Good morning. Welcome to our annual Division of Highway Traffic Safety Grantee Training Seminar. I would ask up front that please mute your microphones if you've not done so already to keep the feedback and all to a minimum. I thank you all for being here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bob Gadosh, Deputy Director here at the Division of Highway Traffic Safety. I very much appreciate you all joining us today. We've done this a few years in a row now. That's our annual opportunity to get everybody together to discuss where we're at currently in terms of the traffic safety program in the state, to hopefully get you some helpful information and set some goals for where we're going in the year ahead. In terms of the agenda for today, we'll be here 2 hours at most, maybe less. We'll see how it all plays out, but we'll set some expectations for the upcoming 2025 grant cycle. As hard as that is to believe, it'll be 2025. We'll discuss some priorities and pass along some new information, new requirements. We'll hear some important updates from the federal level regarding the public participation and engagement requirements that we're all involved in, and that you are certainly supporting us very much on as we move along with that. We'll hear about some current issues relating to police enforcement within our grants and projects, which is always a really critical part of all of our programmatic efforts. As you all know, a huge part of what we do in our traffic safety program is to try to educate, right? Raise awareness, change behaviors. So we'll get into that a little bit today also, some of our new marketing and social media efforts that we're undertaking at the division, and how you can partner with us to move those things forward. And we'll also hear about some data sources and some sources that you can use to access the kind of good data that you need to develop your projects, which of course contributed to our overall efforts in the state. And as much as time permits, we'll go over some procedural things too, talk about how you put your application together for 2025, some of the reporting requirements. We'll go over SAGE, maybe some common issues that folks run into from a technical side there. Again, we'll get into that a little bit as we go along also. So got a lot to cover today. Hopefully it'll turn out to be a beneficial and informative program for you all. If you have thoughts, questions along the way, certainly you can post some questions in the chat box. We'll try to answer those on the fly as best we can. Those that we cannot answer, we will certainly make note of and get back to you all individually offline after the event ends today, and make sure all of your questions get answered. So again, thank you all for being here. We appreciate your commitment to the program and for joining us here for the seminar today. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to our director at the Division of Highway Traffic Safety, Mike Rizal, for his welcome and some initial thoughts. Mike?
Mike, you're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Not everyone's muted. Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone, again, and thank you for joining us here today. As Bob said, we're already here to discuss 2025 grant applications and our federal fiscal 2025, but also a little bit to talk about 2024 and what's going on. I'd like to start by reminding each of you of the mission of the Division of Highway Traffic Safety and really why we're talking today. It's our mission to administer programs to reduce the number of injuries and fatalities on our roads caused by traffic crashes. It's our obligation to spend every dollar allocated to us by the federal government to do exactly that. That is our role in a nutshell, and why we've asked all of you to participate. You're each part of it. In 2023, there were 621 traffic-related deaths on our roadways, including drivers, passengers, pedicyclists, pedestrians. And that's nearly 10% less than it was last year, but still certainly an unacceptable number. Thus far in 2024, traffic fatalities are on the rise, and we're now up 18% compared to this date last year. Certainly many of you in law enforcement have arrived at those crash scenes and witnessed those tragedies firsthand. And I'm sure most of our lives have been touched in some way by the reality of what occurs on the roadway, unfortunately, sometimes. My prior career was in law enforcement, where I spent years as a detective on the State Police Fatal Accident Investigation Unit. And certainly there I saw far too many terrible crashes. I've also lost 3 friends to DWI-related crashes and a friend who was killed as a pedestrian. So this mission here at Highway Traffic Safety is also very personal for me. As I said, we're here today to talk about, what your part is, what your role will be in 2025 in making our roads safer. The decision on which agencies we fund is not always easy. Crashes occur throughout the state and in every municipality at some point. And we would love to fund every agency applying, but we receive more requests than we can fund. Because of this, we rely on our evaluation of each application and select the best ones. I'd like to share with you some of our criteria so you understand how we make our decisions. Hopefully that can guide you on what you do in 2024 and how you fill out your 2024 application. So we're all on the same page. We'll evaluate the significance of your problem statement and the tasks and activities that you have proposed to address that problem. We'll evaluate the likelihood, or what we think the likelihood is, of applying agencies making a significant impact with tasks and activities that they've laid out. So make sure when you prepare your application that you've outlined clear and concise tasks. Have you accomplished your objectives in the past? Maybe last year you said that you would reduce pedestrian fatalities by a certain percentage, or reduce overall fatal crashes, reduce crashes in a particular age group. Did you succeed? What about the prior year? What about the year before that? We'll be reviewing your work and to make sure that your efforts are in line with our objectives. Have you submitted timely progress reports that are descriptive and accurate? Reporting is very, very important. And sometimes something that doesn't really get a lot of emphasis by our grantees. It's the importance is really not clear to them, but rest assured, NHTSA is monitoring us closely to ensure that we're not wasting federal funds and that our grantees are providing timely progress reports. A lack of reporting makes our jobs difficult and can waste time in our office. So please do everything you can to cooperate with those reporting requirements. Make those as best and as comprehensive as you can. Are you responsive to our staff's communications? When you're contacted and asked for additional information, do you comply with those requests? Please do what you can to fulfill that obligation in 2024. Have you fulfilled the new public participation and engagement requirements that you're now asked to meet? Bob just mentioned that a moment ago. This is new, but it's mandatory. You're going to hear more about that in just a moment from Shannon Hughes from NHTSA. For law enforcement agencies, your enforcement outputs are critical. We expect that when it's time for you drive, you text, you pay, click it or ticket, drive sober, get pulled over. If you're participating in those mobilizations, that we expect exactly that, strong participation. And even those agencies who we fund but don't necessarily receive dedicated funding for those mobilizations. We expect that you also participate, prioritizing those hazardous violations that I just mentioned. We'll evaluate the overall strength of the law enforcement agencies that are applying. We expect to fund agencies that are already actively conducting strong traffic enforcement programs. We do not expect DHTS funding to be just provided to conduct your only traffic enforcement of the year. Those law enforcement agencies participating are expected to conduct high visibility law enforcement when using DHTS funding. And the criteria for that is laid out on NHTSA's websites. We can add that link to the chat if you're not familiar with that. This doesn't really include enforcement of non-hazardous traffic violations such as parking, expired registration, broken taillights, things such as that. That's really not what NHTSA funding is for. There's been some agencies who have really not recognized that in the past. So please make sure you're aware of that. We're looking for enforcement of those violations that are most dangerous and most likely to kill people. As I mentioned, for those mobilizations, in particular, DWI, speeding, failure to yield to traffic controls, failure to yield to pedestrians, distracted driving, of course, which is coming up next month, failure to wear seatbelt, child restraints, and violations such as that. So consider that as you work through 2024, and then as you complete your 2025 applications. Not to start this off too overly seriously, but I want everyone to understand what we're looking for. We need effective programs from proactive departments and agencies and partners committed to improving traffic safety and saving lives. This isn't just about funding. This is about accomplishing our mission and making these roads safer. So ultimately, in a nutshell, we need results. The DHTS staff is awaiting your application and prepared to assist you should you have any questions. Hopefully, all of your questions will be answered in today's presentation, but let us know if you need any additional guidance. Thank you again for joining us here today. And remember that the work you do is critical and that you're really the backbone of our highway safety plan. Remember that everyone in New Jersey is counting on you to make our roads safer so that 2024, we can see additional decreases in highway fatalities and safer roads, and hopefully we'll continue on our road to zero traffic deaths someday. That's all I have for now. Turn it back over to Bob so we can get this training started. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. Yeah, and again, thanks everybody for being here. We've got well over 200 attendees on the call, so thank you all for your participation here with us today. And we will move on. We've got a busy agenda of materials to pass along, so we will get to that right now. Again, please, everybody, just mute your microphones. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here if you have not done so. As many of you are aware, public participation and engagement is a huge, really new part of our programs here at the Division of Highway Traffic.
Bob, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Again, just to move on here, as most of you are aware, a big new part of our highway safety plan is the whole public participation and engagement effort that we are undertaking, that you are all partnering with us to engage the public really in a cyclical and an ongoing way to help build out our program and inform those efforts moving forward. So we wanted to have Shannon Hughes from NHTSA come on for a couple of minutes to talk about that, because it's really an emerging issue that has taken shape the last couple of years. a lot of exciting things going on there that we are working on to implement now and that are going to be definitely happening in the months and years ahead. So again, Shannon Hughes is our Deputy Regional Administrator for NHTSA Region 2, of which New Jersey is a part of. And I'm going to have Shannon come on now to touch on a little bit about this issue and other things from the federal perspective that can assist us in kind of setting the table for where we're at with this moving forward. So Shannon, thank you very much. It's great to have you with us here today. I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Bob and Mike, and thank you everyone who's turned out today. It's on a cold weather day like today that makes you kind of thankful for the virtual setting, right? So, but really, really appreciate your attention for just a few moments. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to share my screen so that we can jump right in.
Let me make sure it's not your computer. Make sure it's not yours.
Is everyone able to see that?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So, you've heard it mentioned a couple of times now this morning. We do have some exciting but sometimes challenging new requirements in the federal traffic safety programs across the states and U.S. jurisdictions. And what I want to spend just a few minutes this morning talking about are the distinct and important differences and how you, DHTS grantees, play a role between public participation and engagement and law enforcement community collaboration. So bear with me for a moment here. If you were part of the Grantee workshop last year, you probably remember this, right? Under our current federal transportation authorization, the bipartisan infrastructure law is this new requirement for state highway safety offices to really flesh out a detailed plan and enact public participation and engagement. This is the actual citation that you're seeing on the screen. Why is this so important now? Well, that's pretty much because what we've seen in the data is that there are certain populations, certain communities who sadly are sharing a disproportionate burden of fatalities, crashes, serious injury crashes. And so what we need to do is to stop and sort of holistically analyze the way our programs are developed, the way our grants are invited, the outreach and engagement that we're doing with communities who are unfortunately either overrepresented in crashes or have seriously been historically underserved by the programs that we've managed. This matters not just because of our ability to save lives and, every human life having equal value, but it matters because it also, by a state highway safety office complying with the public participation and engagement efforts, they are sort of automatically checking the box for also complying with important civil rights legislation, Title VI, the executive order on advancing equity across federally funded programs. PP&E, as we call it for short, also helps us to diversify the strategies and the countermeasures that we offer. It just goes to, reason, right? That perhaps something that you developed 20 years ago within your own little team or something like that for outreach and communications materials may not resonate so well with certain audiences, or you just might miss the mark completely. And all of this, of course, is in the context of our collective effort to really try to not just reach zero deaths, but also to embrace this sort of safe system approach by engaging with the engineering and planning communities, the public health communities, and layering that into our more traditional enforcement and education programs, we can stand to benefit and realize many more meaningful outcomes. Language is important. So if you have been following this sort of effort for the past year plus, You've probably noticed the US DOT has also put out something called the Meaningful Public Involvement in Transportation Decision-Making Guide. That, while it's not statutory or regulatory, is a wonderful recipe book, I love to call it, on different ways that you might consider applying these PP&E activities. But importantly, unlike traditional outreach, PP&E is a process. It's not something that you're going to succeed at by sort of doing a one and done event and then crossing your fingers that you'll retain the trust and relationship that you've started with a community. It proactively seeks full representation. It centers and uplifts community members as true experts in the places where they live, work, and move, and incorporates their feedback meaningfully into the projects, programs, and plans. And so you heard Mike and Bob both mention it. PP&E cannot and is not just the responsibility of the New Jersey DHTS. How on earth could they possibly engage every community across the state of New Jersey? They will definitely need to, and probably already have started collaborating with some of you on enacting their exciting plans. This little graphic, just to give you a glimpse, again, the public engagement spectrum moves us away from that sort of one-directional communication, like I'm doing with you right now, right? I'm giving you a presentation. It's very vertical communication. Yes, while you can drop a question in the chat, there's not really engagement happening right here. And while sometimes that inform end of the spectrum is important just to get the word out about who you are and what you do, the hope is that through your thoughtful engagement activities, you're becoming more collaborative with the communities that you're aiming to serve. So I mentioned it early on, there's PP&E and then there's community collaboration. And these are two similar but very distinct requirements for our State Highway Safety Office in New Jersey. This requirement actually pertains specifically to the law enforcement agencies who receive grants. And you'll see listed here a bunch of requirements that DHTS has to describe in their annual evaluation report that they submit to NHTSA. And really, the only one that has changed, the only one that is new is that fourth one, where the state is now required to describe the law enforcement community's community collaboration efforts. And we'll get into what that looks like in just a moment. This, again, just a quick glance at the regulatory citation. Every year, the Division of Highway Traffic Safety, when they apply for NHTSA funds, have to sign off a certifications and assurance statement. And I'm sure that all of you have noticed you're doing the same in your grants in SAGE. It might be tempting to sort of make this the iTunes check the box activity, but buried within these certifications and assurances that you're signing every year are some really important regulatory requirements that you need to be mindful of. And so with regard to community collaboration, what this piece says is that New Jersey is going to support a data-based, evidence-driven traffic safety enforcement program that fosters effective collaboration to increase public safety, and then follow through with the data collection and analysis to ensure transparency, identify disparities in traffic enforcement where they exist, and by that problem identification data analysis process, inform what policies those agencies will adopt to reduce and get rid of those disparities. Again, evidence-based enforcement is not new, but the description in DHTS's annual report has to kind of include both of these pieces, the description of what community collaboration efforts are going on across the state, and then what efforts are being made by agencies to support data collection and analysis, again, to ensure transparency, to build public trust, identify disparities in traffic enforcement, and use that problem ID process to mold policies, procedures, and processes that will reduce those. Data-driven enforcement, of course, begins with data. And this is, again, not a new requirement, certainly something that we know you all are using to assess your most serious at-risk corridors, things like that. It can also lead to picking the right strategy, right? Identifying the right level and type of resources that are going to address whatever specific problem you may have, whether it's a corridor that is prone to speed and aggressive driving, or a poorly engineered multi-road intersection that's really, really tough for pedestrians and cyclists to navigate. And again, evidence-based enforcement helps to drive more robust problem ID of your highway safety challenges. It's not enough to simply copy and paste from NHTSA's FAR's website and say, well, at the national level, this is what they're seeing. No, in fact, we're hoping to see that you're able to use the data analysis tools that you have at your disposal to really drive down into what your local problems are. It helps to assess existing programs and resources that affect highway safety and to tweak those, right, in order to tailor them to best fit your community's needs, in order to best deploy your enforcement resources or education resources and make adjustments as warranted. Just a quick example of what that might look like. If your problem identification at the local level, for instance, is that you have a greater incidence of nighttime crashes, then it would probably make sense to use a deeper dive to, discover how you can deter those nighttime crashes and deploy resources. The community collaboration piece is new. And this is, again, something that DHTS will be required to describe in its fiscal year 24 annual evaluation report and thereafter. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that every single law enforcement agency that receives funds from DHTS is going to have to write a little report on their community collaboration and all many hundreds of those reports get pasted into the annual report submitted to NHTSA? No. That's not the case. But I will say this, because law enforcement agencies who are receiving NHTSA funds are expected to participate in community collaboration activities, it's really in your best interest, not just to do it because you're required to do so, but because there are a lot of fantastic side benefits, right? It really does help to sort of build that public trust, public confidence in their law enforcement agencies in terms of seeing them as a safety partner and somebody who's genuinely interested in their well-being. It can in fact encourage effective engagement. Remember, we were talking about the PP&E requirement. There can be overlap where perhaps a community that DHTS identified as one that is overrepresented, at risk, affected by crashes at a disproportionate rate, perhaps the community collaboration piece from that local law enforcement agency can help drive what engagement strategies will look like. This quick just snapshot of what those sort of smart collaboration principles are. Eerily similar, right, to the outreach spectrum that you saw earlier. Outreach at the beginning, of course, is just kind of getting the word out about what your program is, why it's important, and then seeking those opportunities where you can meaningfully get input from your community. And it might not be, simply on the roadside issuing a citation. It might be that you can identify events, local built opportunities where you, the law enforcement grantee, can get in there and really kind of begin to engage in dialogue. Some quick examples of what this looks like. I know everybody's heard of Coffee with a Cop. Those are just literally one-on-one opportunities with no agenda and no sort of discrete objectives or anything, just an opportunity to get together with folks on a one-on-one basis in a very comfortable environment. Some other examples here, certainly the lower income distribution programs for child safety seats. And we know a lot of you are active in the CPS technician community. Being able to get engaged in community block parties or basketball tournaments, being able to support, facilitate senior walkability events. These are all literally a tiny snapshot of the types of activities that could be considered really successful community collaboration. And finally, the data collection and analysis piece. And this is one, that we understand can be a little sensitive, a little tricky, but we also are extremely confident that by maximizing your transparency, by making sure that your community knows that when you're out there doing enforcement education activities to improve traffic safety on your roadways, that you're making sure that those programs are equitably distributed, that the public again can see the real benefit and can definitely feel a level of trust. So as part of this data collection and analysis requirement, it's not just a matter of sort of tallying up the number of citations or warnings. Context. Why did we choose to, conduct our enforcement activities in this area? Not just the crashes, but perhaps because this is a segment, a tract of our community that is seriously at risk. And, we're trying to do this in a thoughtful and meaningful way. Publicize your results. There's nothing that can be said badly about an agency that is really, really trying to be as visible and, communicative with their community as they can. And just like Mike mentioned with your progress reports, just be as detailed and informative as possible, and present your data in a manner that's, edible for somebody who's not in the traffic safety community, right? Like just break it down into simple language so that people can access that data. And again, I will happily share a copy of this PowerPoint after the fact. Sometimes figuring out how to address this community collaboration requirement cannot be overstated how important it is to stop first internally with your teams and think, right? Think carefully about, what areas of my community not just are most at risk or, places or populations that I'm really concerned about, but what has been the history between that community and my agency? What key messages do we want to get across? And through those collaboration activities, what are we hearing in response? So again, these are the kinds of considerations that you do want to spend a bit of time reflecting upon before you identify what strategies you're going to undertake. And by all means, tailor it to what your community needs. Absolutely. And with that, I will pass it back over to my friends in Trenton. I really, again, thank you so much for your time this morning. I invite you to certainly reach out first to your DHTS program managers, to Mike and Bob. But if you have any specific questions that I can help with, by all means, I'd be happy to hear from you. And with that, I do apologize. I have to go catch a flight. So thank you for your attention this morning. And thank you all for what you're doing to save lives and make a difference in your community as well.
All right, awesome, Shannon. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. And yeah, we know you've got to get on the road here, so safe travels. We will see you again soon, and thank you for that information. That was good stuff. So, all right, moving on a little bit. Let's talk just for a couple of minutes specifically about what we've got coming up, timeline and process wise for FY 2025. The timelines and deadlines for the upcoming grants and program years, the same as usual, falls in line with our federal funding cycle and highway safety plan. A big change for us here at the state level for this year is that we have a 3-year highway safety plan in effect for 24, 25, and 26, as opposed to the old process of having to submit a highway safety plan every year. We have an approved 3-year plan in place, which is new under bill. So that is good. You know, we have our structure here for what we're going to be doing in the years ahead. The one additional requirement is that we do need to submit each year an annual grant application to NHTSA. That's due August 1st of each year, and that will include information on all the projects that we intend to fund in the upcoming year. So that's where all of you come in. Our annual grant application due August 1st is going to include all of your projects that you apply for and that we intend to fund. So structurally, things are a little bit different, but the overall concept is the same. It's all of you and your projects and your work. That's what makes up our highway safety plan, and in this case, our annual grant application also. So with that in mind, April 30th of this year is the deadline to submit applications for FY 2025. That gives us time to review the applications and get the information into our annual grant application, as I said, which is due August 1st. Again, April 30th is the deadline, but certainly you don't have to wait till April 30th. You can submit your application at any time. Give us some additional time to take a look at it and go back and forth if we need to for revisions or whatnot. But again, April 30th is the deadline to submit for FY 2025. Now I'm going to share my screen here, hopefully, and show you a couple things that'll help you along the way in getting your application together. Hopefully you can see my screen here, which I am showing our updated for 2025 grant application manual, which we've had in place for a couple of years. Again, we've updated it for 2025. I will show you in a minute or two where this can be found, but I would definitely encourage you to check this document out, because really from soup to nuts, this includes all the information that you need to successfully put a grant application together for the upcoming year. It's very, very comprehensive, lots of good stuff in here. We've got basically your deadlines, again, your project deadlines for next year. A lot of the priority areas that we are looking to fund. We've got links in here for the highway safety plan that I just mentioned, for the state strategic highway safety plan, and then a lot of other nuts and bolts issue like community engagement. We've talked about that. Some of the eligible items, things that we can fund and not fund, what's allowable, what's not allowable. Again, not going to get into all that today, but it is all here in the guide. And then really it goes page by page. It teaches you how to set the right users up in Sage, how to then create your application in Sage, and then it takes you literally page by page through the application, describing what information we need in each section, whether it's putting your problem identification together, setting some goals, your countermeasures, your ultimate budget, for your project. All of that is included in here, page by page. So it's quite comprehensive, more than we could get into here in one sitting. So I would definitely, encourage you to look through that at your convenience. And I think, as Mike alluded to earlier, we have a program staff here that is ready, willing, and able to assist you, throughout the process of putting your application together. If at any time, you've got questions, first and foremost, your primary contact, if you're an ongoing grantee, one who's had funding in the current year, is to check your grant snapshot in Sage for who your current grant manager is. That's your first point of contact as you develop next year's project. Beyond that, certainly our program supervisors, Ray Reeve, Suzanne O'Hearn, are always available to assist, as am I, to get you pointed in the right direction there on all of that. So again, we're certainly ready, willing, and able to help you along the way to put your project together. Before moving on to our next speaker, I'm just going to show one or two other quick websites that I think would be beneficial in putting your project together. The National Roadway Safety Strategy, I'll show you this really quick. This is kind of like the federal overarching traffic safety policy developed by federal DOT. that I think it's important for all of us to be familiar with, because this really kind of charts the course nationally and then down to the states, and ultimately, what we all do at a local level to put our programs together to save lives on our roads. And what the National Roadway Safety Strategy really encompasses is 5 key areas. It's safer people, safer vehicles, safer roads, safer speeds, and post-crash care. Those are the 5 priority areas of this national strategy. Check out this site if you get the opportunity. Again, kind of lays out, what the national sort of priority areas and plan is for traffic safety, and all of our highway safety plans for each state and ultimately our local projects kind of fall in line with this, or should align with this as much as possible as we move forward and carry out our programs in the years ahead. Now, if we go to our website for the Division of Highway Traffic Safety, a lot of good information on here. On the reports page of our website is where you can find links to a couple of important reports that you'll want to take a look at as you put your projects together. Again, this is on our Division of Highway Traffic Safety website, and you just kind of find, the reports tab, the library tab on the left, and then go to reports. We've got the link to the highway safety plan, the 3-year highway safety plan in here, which definitely would encourage you to check out, as well as the annual report from the previous year. That is a good summary report that gives you information about what went on in the previous year. All good stuff that you could use to help put your projects together, formulate your goals for the upcoming year. Another page of our website, the grants page. This is where you'll find the manual that I just showed you before. It's right here on the grants page of our website. This is the updated FY 2025 grantee manual. Also, if you want to come back and review what was presented in this training seminar today, or if somebody was unable to attend the event today and would like to view it, it will be posted here on the grants page of our website. Right now, this is a link to last year's training, which was from 1 year ago. We will update that with this year's training, so you or others can come back and check this out again if you would like. That's on this page of the website. Now, we have a dedicated page for SAGE for our e-grants on our website also. Of course, the link to the login page for SAGE is here, and also a training webinar. We get a lot of questions, obviously, about SAGE. You guys know that. We know that in-house here at HTS. It takes some learning curve to understand SAGE and the system there. And we always have, of course, new folks coming in on the grantee side, new people joining, your local agencies who don't know how to use SAGE. This is a great place to start. This is a training webinar from a couple of years ago that just really shows how to navigate the site, create applications. It's a couple of years old, but still relevant. This is still the same, version that we're using of SAGE. So if you have a new person who just really doesn't understand the system, or needs some real basic training, send them to the SAGE page of our website and view this training webinar. Great information there. And I guess the last thing I'll show, I referred to it before, is the state's strategic highway safety plan, which is also something important that I'd be remiss not to mention. This was adopted in 2020 through a collaborative effort of all kinds of stakeholders around the state. And this sets an aggressive set of goals for the years ahead to really mitigate crashes on our roads of the state. And again, everything we should be doing with our programs, with our highway safety plan and our programmatic efforts should align with this strategic highway safety plan. So I would encourage you to check out this site also, and to stay up to date on what's going on with that as well. So there again, some useful tools that hopefully can help you get your applications together and round things out for 2025. So that's it for me for now. Let's move on and talk a little bit about enforcement within our projects. Of course, enforcement of our traffic laws by police has always been a cornerstone of our efforts, and we all know it's important to raise awareness, to get our messaging out there. But that only goes so far. Ultimately, we need strong enforcement efforts to back up all of the other kind of educational programs that we do. So again, recognizing how important the enforcement efforts are, we're looking to, reinvigorate, reboot, and just, maximize those efforts as much as we can moving forward. So to discuss this issue a bit more in depth, I'm going to call in Mike Morris, who is our New Jersey law enforcement liaison for the state. Many of you know Mike, retired chief of police here from New Jersey, works through the State Chiefs of Police Association, longtime partner with us. Mike, good morning. I'm going to turn things over to you to take it away here for a few minutes.
Thanks, Bob. You can jump to the next slide. Good morning, everybody, and thank you again for having me here today. I know that many of you have been involved in traffic safety for a long time, and HVE has been a big part of your traffic safety ops. However, I think that taking a few minutes today to review the key elements of a high visibility enforcement campaign is a worthwhile endeavor. I also spent a few minutes highlighting the meaningful community engagement piece that Shannon mentioned, and we'll close out with a few comments on potential pitfalls or challenges that you may face that could undermine or undo your best efforts. Of course, to meet the goal of zero roadway deaths requires a sustained effort throughout the year from you, our partners. To that end, I'll share some resources and a project that we're working on that may interest you. Next slide, please. So what is high visibility enforcement? HVE simply is a universal traffic safety approach designed to create deterrence and change unlawful traffic behaviors. A successful HVE campaign combines high visibility, visible, proactive law enforcement focus, as Mike mentioned earlier, on a specific traffic safety issue. And by example, we're going to use the April Distracted Driving campaign. Law enforcement efforts are combined with visibility elements and publicity strategy to educate the public and promote voluntary compliance with the law. A police omnipresence creates an atmosphere for compliance or behavioral change. Simply drive safe. As an example, April Distracted Driving campaign is approaching. Law enforcement's efforts should be focused on that offense. The enforcement and high visibility effort is being buttressed by local and national media spots, reinforcing the why component. In this example, distracted driving is one of the leading causes of fatal and serious injury crashes in our state. Lastly, remember that every traffic stop has three primary purposes. One, it stops the immediate violation of the law for public safety. Two, the motor vehicle stop may serve as a general deterrent to other drivers. And lastly, a stop may change a driver's future driving behavior. And that really is our ultimate goal. Next slide, please. Back it up one to the data piece, the data slide. On data, Joe's going to go into some more detail in a few minutes, but here are some of my thoughts. Timely, articulable, accurate data collection and analysis is the basis of strategic policing. Shannon mentioned this. While all police agencies collect some form of crash data, not all data is actionable. And I think this is a great spot to mention the new Matrix crash data analytical tool, which I'm sure Joe's going to mention, and the New Jersey Crash Platform and Crash Data Repository. Over the past year, more than half of the state's 500 plus law enforcement agencies have plugged into the New Jersey crash system. A process of approving and posting crash data that once took up to 2 years to complete is now available, actionable within a week of the crash. This is really great news. So why is this so critical? Timely data is actionable data. Crash data provides a law enforcement agency with the ability to identify where the crash problems are and the driving behaviors that lead to those crashes. Having good, actionable data allows law enforcement to direct minimum resources to counter the biggest crash problems. Good crash data is location-based, objective, empirical evidence to be shared with your elected governing body, partners, stakeholders, your service population, and the public in general. It objectively demonstrates why police enforcement of a particular behavior or participation in a high visibility campaign is warranted. It legitimizes police action. Again, I think it's worthwhile to talk about legitimacy real briefly. The term itself and how it impacts traffic safety operations. It's my belief, and in my conversations throughout the state, this is a significant challenge in our community. By definition, police legitimacy is linked to the degree of public support for and cooperation with the police efforts to fight crime, reduce traffic crashes, and mitigate other social harms. And as you know, this is not a new concept. This is the foundation of American policing, and policing requires the consent of the community. All these things tie together. Next slide, please. Community partnerships offer transparency in law enforcement operations and generate support for traffic enforcement and other interventions. And they serve as a potential resource for finding solutions to local problems as they develop. Community-supported and engaged traffic safety effort establishes legitimacy in the policing action. To be successful, this requires two-way communications. Again, this is a great opportunity to remind you of the reporting requirements in the 2024 and 25 Highway Safety Grant Program, the public participation in community engagement reporting. To help you with this component, the division has created a worksheet that can serve as a simple guide to catalog your efforts. As a reminder, all police officers receive Community Policing Training Academy, so this concept is not new. I would argue that most agencies have community policing principles embedded in their day-to-day operations. So take a look at what you're doing now, roll your traffic safety efforts into the conversation, create a feedback loop, and record this conversation for future access. And there's a multitude of examples out there where agencies are doing things today that will satisfy these requirements and highlight some of the good work you're already doing. And I just saw these two in conversations that happen routinely that maybe you could take better advantage of. And the first is the mandatory monthly reporting by the chief of police to city government and the monthly city government or town council meetings. This is a great opportunity to present traffic safety challenges and garner immediate feedback. Secondly, there's almost daily citizens reports of traffic safety problems. These folks at your city council meetings and the daily calls or walk-ins regarding the traffic safety challenge are great future partners and stakeholders who already have traffic safety as a priority in their lives and are willing participants in the process. Next slide. A strategic approach to traffic safety challenges requires the development of an operations plan with defined goals and objectives. A written operations plan or operations order serves as a guidance document and illuminates the high intention from the law enforcement agency. This high intention or purpose-driven action demonstrates how the law enforcement activity works towards the collective goal. Written operational orders avoid the potential pitfall of arbitrary, non-directed activity that may be contrary to agency goals and may undermine more legitimate efforts that are publicly supported. Once again, written orders allow us to direct minimum resources to a particular location targeting a specific problem to gain maximum results. And I just want to comment on formal traffic safety policies if you don't have them. Agent policy and procedures is the police chief's opportunity to establish what is important to the police administration and outline agency priorities in writing. Policies that demand strict enforcement of the long-time challenges related to seatbelts, impairment, speed, and distracted driving are not ambiguous and is a great opportunity to provide direction to line officers and provide operational transparency. Next slide. Too often, the value of traffic law enforcement is overlooked or relegated to the second tier of a law enforcement agency's core function. As to why this happens can be complicated and rooted in a number of reasons. However, when this happens, agencies miss the many benefits that can accrue from an intelligent and proactive approach to this basic police role. Traffic law enforcement is also a valuable opportunity to create a public perception of a visible and vigilant law enforcement agency. To gain public and political support for traffic safety operations, a law enforcement agency may do some of the things we've already talked about. Law enforcement agencies should demonstrate high intention or purpose in the law enforcement activity or be goal-driven. Law enforcement activities should demonstrate intelligent direction or be data-driven. The skillful execution of a law enforcement activity demonstrates a keen stewardship of an agency's or city's time, money, personnel, and physical assets. Sharing the results of a law enforcement activity with the partners and stakeholders demonstrates accountability to the community. Next slide, please. HVE combines proactive law enforcement, which we have already talked about, visibility elements, and a public strategy to create deterrence and change unlawful and unsafe driving behaviors. Your publicity component should always include pre-event, during the event, and post-event messaging. Remember, tell the motoring public, what are you going to do, why you're doing it, do the activity, and then tell them what you did. The highly visible element, including mark units, signage, electric signboards. I think we're pretty good at this. However, make sure your message all aligns with your stated operational goals. Mayor's going to talk about the communication plan in a few minutes. However, I just want to reiterate that during the large mobilizations, there's a state and national paid media presence that supports the enforcement component of the HVE campaign. While most agencies do not have a budget for paid media campaign, they can harness their own media sources by pushing out traditional press releases, op-eds, social media posts, etc. that supports the operational element of the HVE campaign. Next slide, please. The success of an HVE campaign is measured in outputs and outcomes. Outputs are the actions taken to achieve the stated goal, such as hours worked, public engagement efforts, media impressions, field contacts, citations issued, and arrests made. Outcomes are the results of these activities, such as the reduction in crashes of all types, or maybe an observed behavioral change, such as belt surveys. As a grantee, results will be shared with the division during the reporting process. However, you should also share the results with your partners and stakeholders, both internal and external, to close the communication loop and solidify a trusting relationship for future efforts. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about some potential pitfalls. According to the Department of Justice Bureau of Statistics, nearly half of all interactions between the public and police officers occur during traffic stops. So good or bad, this is where we have the greatest impact on public perception. And the first pitfall is that police operations are or appear to be inconsistent and arbitrary. This is an example of here today, gone tomorrow, or no consistency in operations. This also occurs when a law enforcement activity is not intelligently deployed or data-driven. Secondly, an intense effort without community numbers. Remember what we just said, tell the motoring public what you're going to do, why you're doing it, do the activity, and share with them what you just did. Next slide. Second pitfall is the community does not see the direct relationship between the police action or operations and public safety. This occurs when police operations conflict with publicly stated goals. We're going out to do a traffic safety operation and it turns into a criminal investigation, such as the use of pretextual stops and mission creep during a traffic safety operation. Next slide. Lastly is the behavior of the individual officer. This occurs when a line officer has little or no understanding of their operational goals. There's an absence of a communications loop, internal and external. The worst case example is when a employee is less sincere in their effort. One bad officer can sabotage your whole HVE campaign. Next slide. Okay, on sustained efforts. The large mobilizations are great at focusing on the offenses, as mentioned, seatbelts, impairment, speeding, and distracted driving that lead to the largest number of roadway deaths and injuries. However, to truly reach the goal of 0 deaths requires a sustained effort throughout the year. One tool that I found particularly useful is the Traffic Safety Marketing Communications Calendar. And this image you can see down here is the new digital version of that calendar. The calendar itself can guide your annual traffic safety plan in partnership with the state's highway safety plan, and it can provide those media materials to support your operations throughout the year. Secondly, the division is currently partnering with the Camden County Chiefs to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes to vulnerable road users along the Route 30 corridor. This project is unique because it incorporates large mobilizations into a year-long sustained plan that includes a summer slowdown component to reduce speeding. Look for more to come on this, and we hope to develop similar relationships in our most challenging areas throughout the state. Next slide. Like Bob, I want to mention just a few resources here, and a lot of these are also can be found in some of the things that Bob mentioned. I just want to highlight the State Chiefs website and our great partners with the New Jersey Police Traffic Officers Association. Take a look at some of these, especially the countermeasures. This is countermeasures that work. If you're looking for a solution to a particular traffic safety problem, the resources that are provided today here right in front of you and throughout this presentation are a great starting point to develop your countermeasures. And next slide, please. All right, thank you for partnering with the division. Remember that we're all in this together. Our family, friends, and loved ones all share the roads, and we'll take our collective efforts to make sure that they arrive at their destination safely. Lastly, if I can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. As always, be safe. Thank you, Bob.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Well said there. We appreciate the presentation and the work that you do on an ongoing basis with us out in the law enforcement community. Thanks again for that. So moving on, I mentioned earlier how important all of our media programs and campaigns are within the division. Really, everything we do ultimately is about changing behaviors in a positive way. And the traffic safety messaging that we put out there through our paid media, social media, earned media is certainly a big cornerstone of that. I'm going to turn things over now to Mariluz Garcia Diaz, who is our Public Information Officer here at the Division of Highway Traffic Safety, to talk about some cool things we've been able to do recently in the media and marketing area, and more importantly, how all of you can partner with us on that. Mari, take it away.
Thanks, Bob. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As Bob mentioned, I'm Mari Garcia Diaz. I'm the Public Information Officer over here at the division. And I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about social media marketing, how we can amplify messaging and help each other out to spread our important messaging to the public. Next slide, please, Heather. So, like I just mentioned, I'm going to discuss the importance of effective communication and that collaboration for maximizing our traffic safety messaging, and that impact the public that it can have on the public when we're discussing communication, both regarding just social norming and also mobilization specific communication. So when you combine that high visibility enforcement, you combine the education, the engagement, and effective communication, we can have a positive effect on the public and on a larger population than if we were to focus on these different components individually. Next slide, please. So here at the division, we employ different messaging strategies. Our goal with our messaging is obviously to discuss our mission, public safety goals, and our achievements, what we're doing to the public. So to do that, we employ several different tactics. This is going to be this particular section is going to be very HTS specific. There is no one size fits all communication strategy. Each of you have to look into your own agencies and see what's best for yourselves and for your community. But we're just going to give you some best practices and what we find helpful here. So how do we spread our message to the public? There are, more status quo ways. We try to convey those messages through press releases. We create scripts for various traffic safety topics and give those out to the media and to the public. And of course, through social media updates, we'll discuss social a little bit more in the slides to come. But another exciting way that we convey our messaging to the public is through our paid advertising campaigns. For example, currently, we're running an impaired driving advertising campaign. It's pretty awesome. We're, having our messaging out through regular radio, streaming audio, cable TV, streaming TV, and out of home or billboard messaging. And next month, for example, we'll be switching since we have the mobilization going on. We'll be focusing our campaigns on distracted driving. And depending on the time of year, what mobilization is going on, and other factors, we'll switch our advertising campaign topics and tactics. In the future, as I mentioned, we're covering impaired and distracted, but we'll also be covering seatbelts and pedestrian safety, bicycle safety. And in the summer, like Chief Morris mentioned, we'll be doing a little bit on speeding. So again, not one size fits all. We'll adapt as we go and as our needs change. Next slide, please. Next slide, Heather, please. There we go. All right. So collaboration and amplification on social media. So how can we spread our message even further than it is now? We can team up. The easiest way to do this, like and follow us. We're on Facebook and New Jersey DHTS. We're on Instagram at NJ Traffic Safety, and we're on Twitter or X, however you prefer to call it, at New Jersey DHTS. So I'll give you some best practices, but also just something that we recommend that you don't do. So like I mentioned, make sure to reach out to us, like and follow us. If there's something cool going on in your specific agency, an officer you'd like to highlight, if there are any departmental interviews, if reporters are covering you during different mobilizations, give us a heads up. We'd love to share all the good stuff you're doing as well, and we would appreciate it if you share our messaging and everything that we're doing to help. One thing I will recommend that you don't do, without naming names, there are some agencies that tend to just copy and paste our messaging and whatever image we use for a specific social post. Please don't do that. It defeats the purpose. When we share each other's messaging, we're amplifying that message. We're getting to people that may not usually follow us, or people that don't know that we're out there or don't know that you're out there. So, always share as opposed to just copying and pasting. And if you do decide to copy and paste, at least tag us. That way we're able to, again, just spread that message as much as we can. But the more advanced notice that you can give us when anything is coming up in your department that you'd like to highlight, the more time you give me to be able to coordinate, the better. But we're always here to help, and we would love to share that messaging. And next slide, please. So some NHTSA resources, as Chief Morris mentioned, NHTSA is an incredible source of some awesome topics and traffic safety creatives. So you can visit trafficsafetymarketing.gov at any time. They have great stuff. They have sample images that you can pull for the different traffic safety campaigns and mobilizations. What's really awesome is that they have these pre-written press releases that are kind of fill in the blanks. But again, I'm going to go back to that, not a one size fits all. You know what's important to your community. Definitely use those press releases as a template, but really try to add your own spin to it. Try to add, community specific facts or just anything to really resonate with the people that you're trying to reach within your own communities. Talking points, which is great. If you have a representative from your agency that's going to discuss, be it a press release, or like we mentioned, anything that they're going to have an interview, you can really pull those talking points and, give them a heads up and just show them best practices, what should be discussed. And that's just a great way to accomplish that. And, these materials are really essential for effective communication when we talk about what works. This is one of the ways that we can do it. We can pull from federal resources and again, just tweak them to fit our own individual needs. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we missed a slide. There should be an enhancing traffic safety slide. Go back one more. One more. There we go. Perfect. So got some good stuff in this one. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. So effective communication fosters trust. It increases community engagement. And by doing so, it enhances public safety. So what's a great way to reach your community? Short and sweet. One of the easiest ways through the social media that we discussed. Helps you reach a wider audience, and it helps foster that community engagement and involvement that's so important. So one of the best tactics, it's something that you can employ at any time. It's easy, it's fast, it's effective, is to utilize your social media and your website to create that positive engagement, that two-way communication that's so important with the public. So what's one way that you can do that? For the website, you can put in suggestion boxes. You could put something that the public can leave, some questions for you, any way to just open up the engagement. For social media, you can put up some polls, you can put up questions, you can put up surveys, whatever you think is really going to get people not only to like and follow you, but also to comment and to, again, just open that communication between you and the public. Those events are great. Sometimes people are shy, sometimes people are a little bit apprehensive. People feel more comfortable communicating through social media a lot of times. So this is a way to kind of reach that specific audience that may not feel as comfortable, attending one of those other events. One of the best things about this strategy, it helps your agency to meet its public participation and engagement requirements. So it's a win-win. You just can't beat it. And now I have to bother you to go back to that last slide, please. There's my contact information. Like I said, I am the PIO over here. If you are not responsible for communications in your agency, please feel free to pass this along to your PIO. I am always here to help. If there is anything I can do, any resources I can share, any best practices I can share, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to help. And, we really want to make it a point to amplify that messaging and, really change behavior. And if we can do it together, it's better for everyone. And thank you all for your time. Have a great day.
Excellent, Mari. Thank you very much. Yeah, a lot going on in the media and marketing area here at the division. So we appreciate your work on that and the update that you provided there. So moving on, before we go on to our next speaker, I just wanted to take a moment, since we have our statewide partners here with us, to again just thank everybody. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you all for your work currently, many of you have been grantees and partners with us for many years, and your work has just really been critical to everything that we've tried to do here over the years. Yes, we've got some challenges, but there are a lot of great opportunities out there now, and a lot of things that we have to be proud of that are going on now and have in recent years. I mean, just to touch on one or two quickly, as the director mentioned at the outset, we had a 11% reduction in motor vehicle fatalities this past year, which is something that we should all be very proud of. We've got a high belt use rate, 92.93% in our most recent survey. We've got so many projects, I couldn't mention them all, doing great local grassroots education and efforts throughout the state. Counties, towns, nonprofits doing so many wonderful programs to really just to reach people at the grassroots level. Very impressive stuff. Our office is also launching a new project with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia to put out a publicly available integrated crash data resource center, which is super cool. That's going to be a game changer in terms of data. Our next speaker, Joe Weiss, is actively involved with that. When you see this thing launch, it's really awesome. It's going to benefit all of our work, something that's really to get excited about. Great enforcement work going on around the state. We have sustained enforcement grants going on throughout the year, doing important work. We've got a robust drug recognition expert program out there and doing great work there. Strong child passenger safety program. I could go on and on about the impressive things that we have out there. Grant funded programs through our office. If you really look around, it is amazing to see the scope and the reach of all of our programs. It's very impressive. So from us at the division, thank you all for that. Now, all of these programs that I just mentioned really have their root in data. Data is really what makes everything click. It's the starting point for everything that we do. You've got to, identify your problems before you can, attempt to address them. So certainly data more important than ever in terms of everything that we're trying to do, finding new sources of data, using this data to identify new partners and communities to work with and target that perhaps we haven't been involved with before. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Joe Weiss, who is our data analyst here at Highway Traffic Safety. Most of you know, to talk a little bit about where we're at here at the current moment in terms of data analysis and some different resources that you can tap into to develop and improve your projects for the upcoming year. Joe, good morning. Take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I thank you all for coming and listening in for the spiel. I know there's been a lot of information thrown at you, and here I am going to throw a little bit more at you as well. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about crash data, specifically our crash analysis tool that's powered by Numetric. Many of you see a lot of familiar faces, or rather names, on this call, so I know a lot of you are already familiar with the Numetric platform. Essentially, this is kind of our crash repository. So every crash that's completed or filled out on the NJTR1 gets submitted to the NJDOT. They kind of clean up and verify those records and then publish it into their crash records database. Every day we get a batch of crashes sent to us. We get roughly about 1,000 crashes a day sent to us, where we clean and massage and add some calculations on the back end to make querying a lot easier for all the users. And then we push the data once a month to the system. Right now we have data loaded through the end of February, or rather what was processed through the end of February of this current year. That includes crashes about, I would say, about 145,000 crashes so far reported or entered into the database for 2023. So that's about 60%, I would imagine. 2022, we have about 151,000 in the database so far. It's about 70%. So lately, we've past couple days, throughout March, we've actually started receiving 2024 crashes. I know there's a lot of departments, over 300, that are now submitting crashes via NJ Crash, our new electronic data crash or crash data transfer system. So a lot of those crashes, they have probably about a 3 to 4 week delay from the crash event to when it's accessible in the system. And then all the folks still using kind of the old PDF submitting method, they're still averaging about a 6-month delay. So that's kind of why we're still incomplete for 22 and 23. 2021 and earlier is complete and finalized in the system. We have data. We have about 3.5 million crashes in this system, going all the way back to 2010. When you log into the system, it's pretty easy and self-explanatory. I can share a guidebook that we have with everyone here. The system is free to use. So if you just have an email address and you don't have access to this, you can shoot me an email. I'll give it to you at the end, just letting me know that you need access to the system to query for crashes. Again, we have crashes going back to 2010. Typically we like looking at crashes over the past like 5 years. So I'm just going to kind of shrink this down to January 1st of 2018 to present day, just to kind of show you, give you a little walkthrough of how we analyze crash data utilizing this system. So again, you're kind of greeted with this map interface when you're looking at crashes. I always love to kind of go into my own backyard when I do examples of this system and kind of how we use data to kind of focus our problem identification statement, that who, what, when, where, why question when we're crafting our grant applications. So I always like to dive into Morristown since, like I said, it's kind of my backyard. So as I quickly just added Morristown to the filter, I kind of clicked anywhere in the application, and the system automatically zooms me into the town of Morristown. And I was looking at every crash over the past 5+ years, going back to January 1, 2018, all the way through present day. I think the most recent crash was actually on New Year's Eve, 2023. So it's a little bit more than 5 years of complete data, or yeah, a little bit more than 5 years of complete data. You'll see on the right hand side of the page, we have a breakdown of kind of what's happening in all of these crashes. The first section or aggregation that you'll find really relates to our highway safety plan. So you'll see things in here like distracted driving, older driver involved crashes, whether or not there was an injury reported. We have our young driver involved crashes, unsafe speed, pedestrian alcohol, drug driving, bikes, restraint use, you name it. All of these emphasis areas in our DHTS crash summary are aligned with our highway safety plan. So if you, as an agency, are looking to apply for pedestrian grant or pedestrian safety grant, you can narrow your filters down by kind of selecting pedestrian involved, super simply by clicking on one of the metrics over here on the right-hand side. You'll see as you start adding filters, the numbers start to change. We started with about 3,800 crashes in Morristown over the last 5+ years. About 95 of those involved the pedestrian. On the map, you'll see kind of the exact locations, known locations, if we have a lat and long for that particular crash, kind of appear on this map. If there's more than one crash that took place at a certain spot, it'll kind of cluster. So here it's telling me that there's 2 crashes right across South Street here in Morristown. This is entering the Morristown Green here, really high traffic area for motorists, non-motorists alike. If you click and identify any of these crashes, you kind of get some specific information pertaining to the crash. So if you're really trying to target, a specific location, in this case, Deer Heart and South Street in Morristown, you can kind of drill all the way down to that street level. You'll see as well in the metrics pane on the right-hand side, several different aggregations. So we have crashes grouped by their severity. So of all of these pedestrian crashes, how many were fatal, serious injuries, no apparent injury, so on. We have a breakdown of how many crashes occurred, pedestrian crashes occurred in Morristown by year. We also have the month of the year. So this helps kind of, help if Morristown was going to kind of go after a pedestrian safety grant and conduct some sort of pedestrian safety initiative. The best time for them to go out and deploy these resources may not be in the August months. Maybe this is a kind of a slow time in Morristown, whereas the shore points might see the opposite effect, right? You might be down Long Beach Island or anywhere along the 35 corridor down the Jersey Shore, and you might see the opposite phenomena. So if you were searching for pedestrian crashes down the shore, you might obviously see a spike in those crashes during the summer or the warmer months versus January or February when it's a little bit more quiet. Another when question, time of day of week, right? So when are these pedestrian crashes happening in Morristown? The majority are happening in December and January. There was 22 crashes just in those 2 months alone. It's about a quarter of all of the pedestrian crashes happened in those 2 cold months. The majority of them, nearly a quarter of them, are happening on Wednesdays. So we might be talking about our commuter crowd, folks coming in, working in the downtown area, walking to and from work. When are these crashes taking place as well? 2 to 4 p.m. seems to be the hot time when a lot of crashes are happening. Obviously, it makes sense during the rush hour time period. But this might be a perfect opportunity for targeted pedestrian enforcement. We also have several other characteristics broken down for you on the right. Hold on one second, Andrew. So I have my 2-year-old assistant with me today, and I knew he was going to want to interject soon. You'll see here that you'll have crash characteristics of other things that were involved in these pedestrian crashes in Morristown. About 14% of them involved an older driver, 5% were curb-related, younger driver involvement, how many ran off the road. We also have driving contributing circumstances. In this case, about 15% involved distracted driving use. About almost 9% were drivers under the influence of alcohol. That's a pretty large breakdown when I believe the statewide average is like 1.4% of all crashes. So that's a very large overrepresented statistic here for pedestrian crashes in Morristown. And then lastly, we have our overburdened community breakdown. So of all of these pedestrian crashes over the last 5 years in Morristown, how many of them occurred in what kind of overburdened community? So we noticed about 25% occur in minority labeled communities, and about an additional 16, almost 17% were in low income and minority communities. Nearly 40% of all of these pedestrian crashes in Morristown took place in one of these overburdened communities. So that's a pretty high designation of all of the crashes taking place in Morristown. Another thing that the system can do is help prioritize where. So we've learned a little bit about the who, what, when, where, why of pedestrian crashes in Morristown. Before I dive into kind of looking at or targeting specific roadways to enforce or to do high visibility enforcement or education, let me quick show you how to export this information. So there's 2 ways to do that. One is if you're a spreadsheet person, you can kind of click on the raw table feature on the right-hand side of the metrics pane. And here you have a table of all of those crashes, right? So every single row in the system, all of the columns that pertain to that specific crash as well. If it's on the TR1, it'll be in the system as well. You can download this spreadsheet as an Excel spreadsheet. So now you have all of this information available to you at your fingertips. So if you're, like I said, if you're a spreadsheet person, from here you can create different pivot tables and create your own extracts or breakdowns. Again, if this is a familiar place for you. If not, one of the things that we do, we try to make it a lot easier for you to get the data summarized out and in your fingertips. We provided you the ability to generate reports. So I'll just show you 2 reports real fast. The first one is a summary report. A summary report is essentially an export of everything that we're looking at here. So this is a very interactive dashboard type database. And sometimes you want to kind of extract this out and put it onto a piece of paper. So everything that you looked at on that crash query application, you'll find here in this PDF. So we'll see when it was created, the dates that we were filtering for. So that January 1st, 2018 through the end of the year 2023. It shows our applied filters. So again, I'm looking at Morristown pedestrian involved crashes over that time period. Then it starts giving me a general breakdown, tells me how many crashes, that 95. 2 of them were fatal crashes. And then everything that you saw in the metrics pane, you'll see appear as a summary. So you can export this information. You can share this with any of your community engagement groups, or if you're working with local school districts or downtown redevelopment zones, or kind of, you name it. You can kind of craft these reports. Let me pull this out. and send this and share this to anyone that you may see fit. Also, we love seeing this information as well. So when you're applying for a grant at DHTS, and you're trying to justify your need for, in this case, pedestrian safety funds, having a report in Sage or sent to one of our program staff to help articulate that need is really helpful, not only for us, but also for NHTSA when we're looking at project justification, project funding justification. So having this report kind of to back up that problem ID statement, answering that who, what, when, where, why. We're Morristown Township. We want to conduct high visibility enforcement in our pedestrian corridors, crosswalks. We aim to do it through these countermeasures, right? These high visibility countermeasures. Here are some stats. We know that there's been nearly 100 pedestrian involved crashes. The majority of them, or 85%, resulted in an injury. About 16% were distracted drivers. So that's a group of driver behavior that we're going to be targeting. When are we going out? Our best bet is to go out during our November, December, January months. That's when nearly 30% or a third of all of these crashes have been taking place, so on and so forth. And then having this summary report available for our team to kind of look at is really, really helpful. Another report that we have available to you is called a comparison report. I'll show that one to you really quickly. This basically allows you to look at crashes in different time ranges. So period 1 versus period 2. So say you did some sort of high visibility enforcement during the 2020 year. You can kind of compare your 21 January. Essentially gives you the opportunity to compare crashes taking place, related to your filter for period 1 versus period 2. So I did 3 years versus 3 years. The first 3 years in Morristown for these pedestrian crashes resulted in about 52. The second period, again, we're not looking at complete data. 22 and 23 are still incomplete. There was about 43 crashes. So there was a reduction in overall crashes. There was an increase in serious injury crashes. There was one less fatal crash. And then again, we have all of our metric breakdowns, and it compares your period 1 versus period 2. So just a helpful resource for you to utilize when you're doing your analysis. Just a quick way to say, is this pedestrian crash problem in my town or my service area getting better, or is it getting worse? Speed involvement in pedestrian crashes is getting worse. There's more bicyclists being involved in these crashes. Alcohol is increasing its prevalence in these pedestrian involved crashes. There's been a huge, almost 8%, 7% spike in younger drivers involved in ped crashes. So again, there's so much rich information here for you to kind of pinpoint, target, identify, and use for your problem ID statements. And the last thing I wanted to show you, kind of showcase in the new metric system, is the where. Okay, so we kind of went through the who. Who are we targeting? When are we going out there? But where are we going to be doing this enforcement or these education activities? So, is that so? Oh, you want volume? There you go. So I can open up this query in what's called our sliding window analysis. It's just a fancy way of saying hotspot tool. So what the system is doing now is it's quickly looking at all of the crashes in Morristown. Let me fix my years here. It didn't carry over my years. 2018 will be January 1st. So I'm looking at all the crashes in Morristown, again, in that same 5+ time period that involved pedestrians, and what the system did was, I don't know what to tell you. So what this is showing us here is kind of, excuse me, I'm sorry about this. What this is showing us is kind of our top corridors of where these pedestrian crashes are occurring. So the number 1 location in Morristown is right here. If anyone's familiar with Morristown, this definitely would not be a surprise. There's been so much funding and effort. I know they put in kind of like a. Please hold on one second, okay? I'll be just with you in just a moment, all right? Okay, you can have this. Okay, excuse me. He wants his pizza. I don't even have pizza to give him. If any of you are familiar with the Morristown area, again, this is kind of not a surprise that it's showing up as the #1 kind of location for these pedestrian crashes taking place here. I know the DOT's put in extensive amount of money to kind of redo a lot of these intersections here with some high visibility crosswalks. I know here's a Hawk beacon, so it's a pedestrian activated crosswalk stop sign for motorists. So there's been a lot of infrastructure dollars put into this location, but still it remains the #1 spot for ped crashes in Morristown. The other spots, as you can see here, it's kind of right in front of the courthouse, coming up the hill into the Morristown Green, as well as this corridor here on Andrew. I don't have any pizza. I'll make a few in just a moment. Okay. Okay, I know. You'll see a corridor here in front of Morristown. Again, I'm really just trying to show you and emphasize just the strengths of this system, help you target and prioritize just the who, what, when, where, why. You can export this list as well as a report, give it any title like. And when you generate your report, you get a summary of all of those corridors that we were just looking at. And then you get a little snapshot with a roadway histogram of like where exactly by the milepost those crashes occur. So in this small little 0.3 mile corridor on Route 22, it tells you exactly where in that 0.3 mile corridor those crashes were taking place. Sometimes in this case here, the #6 corridor, you see a lot of them stacked in one spot. I would imagine if we kind of zoomed in and more closely examined this location, it would probably be I bet you it was an intersection or something along those lines. So from here, again, you can use this information to help strengthen your problem ID statement. It really helps your grant application process, and it helps us justify the funding need. This is going to take a little bit for it to generate a PDF, but it will in just a moment. Come back to that. So those are the two quick examples, or one example I wanted to show you, the two different ways to help prioritize that who, what, when, where, why statement. Again, this system is completely free for you guys to use. If you need access to the system, you can email me here. It's joseph.weiss@njoag.gov. Again, just shoot me an email. I'll shoot you an invitation link. You just create a password and then you'll be off and running. The last thing I wanted to show you, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the NJ State Police Fatal Records Database. So every day around 10 o'clock, they update the year-to-date analysis. So this kind of gives us a snapshot of like how we're doing right now. And that's not so good at the very moment. So right now we're up almost 25% in fatalities compared to this time last year. And there's been one more fatality in 2024 compared to this same time in 2022. It tells you a little bit, very basic drill downs. There's still so many open cases that require further investigation. Andrew, hold on. I'll be with you in just 1 second. You'll see a breakdown of the age of the victims that were fatally injured in crashes, as well as the person type designation, whether pedestrian, bicyclist, passenger, or driver. I was really hoping to show you guys kind of an overview, a very brief overview of the CHOP website that we're going to be launching. We're going to be having a beta link sent to us any day now. That's going to kind of be the home or the landing page of this website. This website's going to really change the way we look at data. Andrew, I'll be with you in just a minute. Can you go get some? You go get an applesauce, and I'll be right with you. Okay. This CHOP database is really going to take a look at. Okay, I'll be right with you. So sorry. Well, I'm going to have to stop my sharing now because my assistant is really having a tough time. But I did show you guys kind of all the things I wanted to kind of go over today, namely the Numetric crash analysis tool. Again, I wish I had more of a visual for the CHOP database that we're going to be launching soon. We'll send out a link once this is more of a formal launch. We'll be sending out a press release letting everyone know of this new resource available to anyone. But again, if you have any questions for me, come on, buddy. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out to me at this email address. I'd be more than happy to help you out. to go get this guy some pizza out of thin air. Apologize for the disruption, and again, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you all for the time.
Sounds good, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, Numetric is an awesome tool that we use at all levels of what we do here. Joe, of course, makes it look easy as he navigates around through there. But we're definitely available to give assistance there. And I know there's training that are offered also on Numetric. I'd encourage you to get in there because it really is a cool tool that serves a lot of benefits at all levels of developing and analyzing the data that we use for our programs. So. We're getting kind of late in time here. I'll just take a couple of minutes and talk about one or two more things, I guess, before we wrap up. Heather, if you could just throw up those last couple of slides of mine, I'll talk about the grantee reporting just a little bit. Obviously, we have our programs and our projects that we run every year. Reporting is critical, the reporting that you do, and we're always, talking about how to, to be more consistent and do a better job with that. So what are the requirements in terms of reporting? Well, for our full year grants, we require quarterly progress reports and reimbursement requests. And as you all know, we're on the federal calendar for our grants. The grant year begins October 1st, runs through September 30th of the following year. So you can see on the chart here when the quarterly reports are due during the course of the year. We're looking for, again, the progress reports and the reimbursement requests. The only exception being if you're funded through the state pedestrian fund, that's state money, operates on the state calendar. We have a handful of those we put out each year. Those are the only ones that would deviate from this calendar of the regular federal reporting requirements. You've heard a lot about the enforcement mobilizations that we do throughout the year. There's 4 large mobilizations. We do hundreds of grants in that area with these enforcement mobilizations each year. And each of those it's just required to submit 1 progress report and 1 reimbursement request after the mobilization ends as soon as possible, within a month if is the requirement, but definitely as soon as the campaign ends, as soon as possible thereafter, submit your progress report, which is basically your summons numbers and your reimbursement request. So we can reimburse you for the funds that you did expend. I've heard a lot about community engagement. Also, the grantees, you know who you are, who we've asked to partner with us and report on your community engagement activities. Those reports we look for twice a year, mid-year and final. So mid-year point coming up for those. And again, you know if you're affected by that because we've gotten you that information. We'll be looking for those reports, certainly here this year and moving forward. Both types of reports, we can go to the next slide, are very important. Again, progress reports, reimbursement requests, but both are required. Some grantees are a little better with some than others. We do need them both every quarter. If you did not have any activity, you could still submit us and still should submit the reports in Sage, noting that you did not have any activity or expend any funds during the quarter, so that we can have our files there in Sage as up to date as possible. Submitting your reports on a timely basis really does serve many purposes. Of course, it lets us know how you're doing, so we can properly monitor your projects and assist when needed. Your regular reimbursement requests help us to liquidate funds, which we're certainly looking to do, that we have out there in approved grants. And also it helps us, close out the grants when the time comes. We want to get regular reimbursement requests in during the year so that we're not, too back-end loaded with large claims at the end of the year. And also, the sooner we get claims in, the sooner we process them through, we can identify issues, right? We're going to see little issues that might arise in your grants. We can clear them up and correct them earlier rather than have all that kind of hitting us at the end during closeout period. So I know at the division, we always sort of operate on that closeout mindset. That closeout period, October, November, December, super busy for us at the division. We'd ask you to do the same thing. Keep that in mind, and always sort of have that period of time in mind to do what you can to help us successfully close out the grants when the time comes. So a couple of things you can do along those lines is wrap up your activities if you can a little bit earlier in the grant year. As you get into September, start to think about closeout, get your ducks in a row and stop your activities at that point if you can, to get your final claims prepared and submitted. Definitely be aware of very late activity. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but we definitely want to make sure that we get purchases and things like that done earlier in the grant year, no later than August 1st, if possible. There's nothing will mess up the closeout of a grant more so than late activity, trying to squeeze in late purchases or whatever right at the end of the year, which is really going to back things up. So that's definitely to be avoided at all cost. And the last thing that I'll mention is something we seem to have issues with every year is, everybody needs to remember that, every grant year stands alone. I mean, even if you have a grant that's been, with us for multiple years, every year is a standalone year. And, again, subsequent years have to be, applied for at that point. And there's a beginning point and an end point for each grant year, and all the costs that are incurred have to be, claimed within that year. We can't carry funds or carry expenses over from one year to the next. It seems like every year we have some issues with these types of things. Anything that you do in this current FY24 grant, or even if it's something late in the year, like an overtime detail or somebody whose salary is paid right up till September 30th, that's got to be included in your final claim. We can't carry that forward and see that in next year's 2025 grant. That's not allowable on the federal level. Every year stands alone. So certainly be mindful of that. So let's see. I'm just going to show one or two things along the lines of reporting. I'll just share my screen here and just touch on two things briefly that seem to also kind of hang us up on the reporting side. One being travel, and the other being equipment. Of course, travel is allowed, out-of-state travel to conferences and things like that within your grants. But we seem to always have issues with the travel process. You'll see in Appendix B in that grants manual that I showed you earlier that you also take a look at. It clearly explains, what is allowable, what we will be able to fund through our federal grants for out-of-state travel. And it's very streamlined. Basically, it's just three things: the airfare to the event, the registration for the event, and the lodging for the event. All of which have to follow the federal allowable per diem. So that's basically all we will fund for out-of-state travel. And super critical is to do your travel authorization in advance. It's required. You got to go in Sage, create your authorization so that we can approve these things in advance to then avoid problems on the back end. It seems inevitably we get folks that might have some travel in their grant. It's an approved line item, and then they go off and travel without doing the authorization. And that causes problems because there's going to be things that are, that are going to be billed for that we cannot reimburse for. So the pre-authorization is critical. That allows us to say everything is good. Yes, everything looks good, or no, this part of it's not going to work. Clear all that up in advance before you travel, and that will go a long way to making sure that everything goes smoothly. In terms of equipment, let me just show you one or two things on that. Let's find the right spot here. Yeah, it's like page 21 in the grant manual here under the other direct costs area. Two things to keep in mind if you're going to be looking to purchase equipment in your grant. Number one is the $5,000 threshold. We don't have a lot of big ticket items like that, but if you are going to seek an item that is above $5,000, that's going to need prior NHTSA approval. So we'll have to identify that within your application and get NHTSA approval on that before we can allow that purchase to go forward. And that includes software. It includes component parts to an item. So very important. We need to be aware of that $5,000 threshold. Every year it seems we seem to get one or two issues on these. Always bear in mind that $5,000 threshold. The other key threshold for equipment is we need to, at our level, track any equipment you purchase that is at the level of $250 or more. So it's allowable for you to do so, but when you have items that you purchase within your grant that are $250 or more, you need to do the tracking form with your grant reimbursement in Sage so that we can then track it as per our requirements and move forward from there. So, bear in mind that also. It seems like equipment often is an issue. And the last thing I will mention is along the lines of purchases, or what kind of things are you allowed to purchase to give away? And basically, under the current rules, it's not much. The commodities area of your grant, we're generally pretty limited now to printed materials only, like brochures, palm cards, things like that. Gone are the days from years ago when we were able to, print giveaway items and develop giveaway items, pens, pencils, keychains, those kind of things that we used to do to promote messages, products. That was ruled ineligible a number of years ago by NHTSA. And we're pretty limited now in what we are able to do. So again, just make sure you're following the guidelines in here in terms of what's allowable on the commodities side. And I'll show you one final thing here that's also in the appendix if you're looking for further information on that. It's Appendix C. This is the final NHTSA rule on what is allowable and what is not in terms of materials purchases. So any final questions you have, if you want to get a little bit more detailed on it, it's Appendix C in the manual. That should let you know what you're able to do and not able to do, with the federal funding in terms of materials. So I think I will leave it there. We're getting close to 12 o'clock. Stop sharing. Again, thank you very much for your attention. That is it for me. We've had some great speakers, a lot of information thrown at you. Appreciate your time. And certainly, if you have any other questions, throw them into the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. And with that, I'm just going to turn things back over to Director Rizal for some final comments before we conclude.
Thanks, Bob, for putting this presentation together, for all the work you did in organizing this and all the work throughout the year at Highway Traffic Safety. For everyone watching, he's the one that makes all this run. Thanks, Maury and Mike, Joe and Shannon for your presentations, and everyone else at DHTS for what they do throughout the year. Most importantly, I'd like to thank everyone who is interested in our funding and who will be applying for grants and who has worked in our programs throughout the years. We've kind of laid out our expectations, provided you with some resources, and hopefully given you what you need for some successful programs. Just to boost a few things, COVID and what happened with law enforcement and all the rest of our agencies really derailed a lot of traffic enforcement, and we saw the toll, right? We saw that it cost hundreds of lives and thousands across the country. So we certainly want to get back on track, and I see a lot of agencies definitely getting back on track. Impaired driving, I want to let you know, is at a 33-year high in the last 2 years. As far back as state police has tracked, impaired driving as a contributing circumstance has been at a 33-year high. Also wanted to boost getting those applications in early, identify a local problem for us. Don't underestimate the importance of publicity, getting the message out there that we're doing our jobs. The police are out there doing enforcement is important because tickets will be issued, but ultimately we want everyone to believe that law enforcement is out there looking for violators and they comply with the law voluntarily, and our roads are safe. For anyone who joined late, our apologies for the confusion about the link. But as Bob mentioned, this has been recorded and it will be available for you to you in a few days as soon as we can get it up on our website. The old one's up there now. We'll put this up there. So please take a look and see if there's anything that you missed. If you know of any other agencies that are interested in applying, please share that link with them so they can see all that we have to offer. We look forward to seeing your applications, and we will be in touch with you as needed. Until then, stay safe and keep doing all that you're doing to keep New Jersey roads safe. And so we know lives are on the line, and certainly we are all counting on you to do your part to make our roads safe. Thank you again, everyone.